Hello, my name is Mikhail Alexandrov, and today I'm going to talk about Greek government debt crisis. So, first of all, I would love to explain to you what it is actually. So, basically, the Greek government debt crisis was a crisis which was faced by Greece in the years after the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. So, basically, it took time somewhere between 2009 and 2019, so 10 years. Well, what's so special about it? It caused as a series of sudden reforms and austerity measures that led to impoverishment, loss of income, and poverty. Well, in all, the Greek economy suffered the longest recession of any advanced capitalist economy to date, overtaking the US Great Depression. This is taken from the Balance 2015. So now I would love to show. Oh, okay, that's too much. Now I would love to show you a small timeline which is relevant as for the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, and also it is relevant to the Greece government debt crisis because basically the fact is that the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 it caused the debt crisis in Greece. So what has happened in 2008? Basically, the collapse of Lehman Brothers made that crisis possible. In 2008, Greece's budget deficit is far higher than the country had let on, so the situation is already getting really bad for Greece. In 2010, austerity measures are adopted in different countries like Greece and Ireland. Coming to 2012, we may say that a permanent rescue fund is planned as European leaders look for solution. And in 2012, that's just hard for countries and banks they struggle to get balance sheets under control, and the whole world economy is still not fully recovered after the situation in 2007 and 2008. And if most of the countries are not yet recovered, the situation in Greece is completely ruined. And before explaining anything, I would love to show you the map and take about the stakeholders. First of all, coming to the map. Okay, that's too big. This map, it basically, by the way, the information is from BBC News 2008. It shows the countries which were the most affected by the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. Here, like Russia, the US, Canada, and here, like I doubt that you actually can see it, but there are like yellow spot where Greece is. So yeah, I just find it important to mention in my presentation what actually was the reason why this Greek government debt crisis actually happened. So yeah, that's why I'm mentioning. Well, that's why I'm speaking so much about the financial crisis of 2007 2008. But now back to the topic. So lots of different stakeholders in this situation, but I thought about that my main purpose is to identify the most important ones, and I found four. So the government of Greece, also working population, tourism sphere, and other countries. So speaking about government of Greece, so the government had to face one of the most difficult situations which they could ever face. Uh, Basically, they had like it was like kind of a skill test for the current government to come up and implement some of the effective measures which are actually going to regulate the situation and somehow save the country from getting into the huge troubles like become bankrupt, which actually these measures didn't really help. So I'm going to speak about that a bit later. Coming to the working population, well, within that crisis, which is also going to be mentioned a bit later, lots of people they've lost their jobs and basically they were left without any source of income, which is definitely not the best situation. And based on the fact that the amount of those people was actually pretty big, I think working population is definitely a stakeholder of this situation. So coming to tourism sphere, here we can see that actually both like tourists and the country were affected, because like for tourists that, well, probably I could separate it like in tourists and the country, but I think it's fine to keep this as one stakeholder. But for tourists, this is the thing, like when in countries something goes wrong, when the economic situation is super unstable, when people are definitely not happy with that and they're striking against the current government, this situation does not encourage tourists to come to the country, and so that's bad for them. And for the country, since Greece is a really popular place to come for holidays, I may say that like basically tourism sphere was one of the main sources of income in this country, and the fact that people for some years were not really encouraged to come there, that's definitely made some problems. Actually, speaking about tourism, the situation was not that terrible, but for around 5 years, which I'm gonna show more direct numbers later. For around 5 years, that like tourists, the level of tourism in this country, the amount of incoming tourists, it was not really changing from year to year. It was not increasing how it should be. It was just stable. And coming to other countries, yeah, that's also going to be mentioned a bit in the future. I'm talking about other countries, and also I mean Canada. So what has actually happened when, well, from the point of view from the other countries, like from, for example, Canada, which I'm going to speak more detailed in the future, when something like this, the possibility of a default of the country in one of the strongest union, like when something like this happens, it actually scares other countries, and they lose their trust in European Union. And also, of course, that affects like different trade patterns like imports, exports, and different financing. Yes, I think I'm done with this part. And now I think I'm gonna go to Greece within the crisis. Okay, Greece within the crisis. So basically, yeah, Greece is the country that suffered the most from the global crisis of 2008, which I've already mentioned before, like the global financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. So here is a nice graph from, by the way, from World Bank 2018, which shows, it shows the debt in percent of GDP. And as you can see, the green one is Eurozone average, and the blue one is Greece. And well, here this is 2007 till 2019. We can see a huge increase in Greece debt. Like for the whole Eurozone, we can also notice that the situation was not that perfect as well. We can still see a decrease, like an increase, but the increase between, for example, 1992 and 2010 is around, well, let's say this is 75. This is like, it was an increase in around 20%, but like for Greece, the increase was more than 60%, and that's a huge difference. And I think this graph, it actually shows really well how bad that crisis was for Greece. So now I'm gonna speak a bit more about economical changes. And basically between 2008 and 2015, Greece GDP dropped down from 354.46 billion of US dollars to 96.59 in 2015. The dramatic decrease took the place right after the beginning of the world crisis. While coming to the second point, amount of full-time jobs has decreased by 1/4. So, well, what does it mean for us? Well, and for Greek people, they lost their jobs, and of course, the amount of people which were not happy about the government because they couldn't do anything effective, like the amount of those people, it increased significantly. And we're going to speak about that a bit later, and I'm even going to show you a couple of pictures that people were definitely not happy with the current government. Coming to the next point, the unemployment rate between 2008 and 2014 increased 4 times and reached the approximate amount around 27%, which is definitely a lot. And as you can see, the second and the third like points that are connected. Even though if before the unemployment rate in Greece was not that small, like in comparison with the whole Eurozone, but now it became just completely huge, 27%. That's a lot. In the period between 2008 and 2012, Greece experienced a strong stagnation in the tourism business and specifically in the number of arrived tourists. Well, I think I've mentioned that before. And Greece has faced a large number of strikes, and the number of involuntary strikes has increased. The number of unemployment youth has tripled. Well, this is talking about people, if I remember correctly, between 18 and 25 years old. And well, actually, what does it mean for us? We have young, educated people, and they don't have an opportunity to get a job in Greece. What does it mean? What's going to happen? Of course, they're going to leave the country, and yeah, like that's also not that good. Like good, clever, educated people which just finished universities, they couldn't just find jobs in the country, and of course they would leave the country because they have, if they have such an opportunity. By the way, information is coming from Trading Economics 2019. So as I've already mentioned, and as you can guess probably, the situation was pretty bad. So people didn't really have well, most of the people didn't really have any source of income. They couldn't pay for their rents, they couldn't pay taxes, the government was not doing anything, young people were leaving the country. So what would people do? I would go for strikes. So this is a nice image which illustrates pretty much what was going on. Strikes against the government in Greece due to poor handling of the economic crisis and incompetent measures taken by the government against the civilian population. Tania 2014. Tania is local newspaper in Greece. So here I have the second picture, and you can see lots of people with different labels, with like different pieces of paper which are not that happy with the government. This information is coming from Socialist Worker 2011, and what's going on here? This is basically Greek society has exploded into protest against austerity measures, threatening to bring down the government of Prime Minister George Papandreou and his centre-left PASOK party. Well, all of that was definitely not good, and just life was difficult within that point of time in Greece. I'm going to come back to this social point again, and like social and like small businesses point again, but I think I need to say a word about, well, different trades, because of course not only inside situation in country was affected, but also outside the situation, like outside the country. Basically the trade was affected. Yeah, that's going to be the right way to say that. The right way to say it. I'm sorry. Okay. So aluminium export. Aluminium export is one of the main exports for Greece, and as you can see, in 2009 and 2016, we can see great increase in this area. So basically, yes, of course, right after the financial crisis, there was a slight drop down. After that, seems like the situation improved a bit, but you know, like the most difficult years, 2011, 2012, it was a stagnation within within export of aluminium, and just around 2016 the situation has treated and seems like everything went in a positive way. So that's what I've got to say about, like, this is just like a brief example how trading patterns were affected within that period of time. No, I think that's too early. I think first of all I'm gonna give you a bit more statistics. This is a change in working conditions. So 9 in 10 employees in the private sector in Greece faced worsening labor conditions in the years of the debt crisis, according to a survey carried out for the General Confederation of Greek Workers, GCEE, on the occasion of the 100th year anniversary of its founding, like this is Xinhua 2018. So as you can guess, people definitely could mention the fact that the situation in the country was going down, down, and down, and it was not improving at all. So what do we have for now? We have strikes, we have unemployment. The crime rate was also increased based on, like, if there are lots of people who are like, and they do not have an opportunity to get money, they don't have an opportunity to get food for the families and for themselves, of course the crime rate would be increased, also coming to the fact that people were leaving the country, and people who were not leaving the country, they were coming for strikes. And this is definitely not the situation when any normal businesses could exist. So I think that's going to be like a sum up of life changes. I think some of the things were mentioned already, but this is, well, I think yeah, this is basically the sum up of what I've already said, with probably some of the new things. So the crisis began in 2008 and Greece reached its peak in 2011 and 12. The way of life of the Greek inhabitants has changed a lot. People in the tourist sphere had to change jobs since some of the country's residents were involved in the tourism business because of the constant strikes and the poor economic situation. Due to the increase in prices in stores, the average quality of living of the Greek population has decreased, and private businesses had to face hard times without any potential governmental support. Of course, like, if government couldn't treat the situation in the right way, any small businesses, they were in danger, because, like, well, still it was difficult for them, and even if they needed some of the help from the government, of course it would be hard for them to receive that help, because government basically doesn't really have money. And due to this fact, some of the businesses have closed. The unemployment rate increased, and more people had to go to work for the state-owned enterprises, which actually also, well, like, they were suffering not the best times. And as I've already said, educated Greeks left the state. And this is from Peloponnesos 2013, also the local newspaper. Okay, so I think I'm done with this part, and now we're gonna come to Canadian part. Okay, coming to Canada within the crisis. So as I've already said at the beginning, that situation, it was shocking for the whole world and for Canada as well, because, well, no one expected that such a problem would happen in the European Union, which had some kind of status and some kind of power, and everyone thought that this, like, the economical system within this union is pretty strong and nothing like this can ever happen. Here, this is a quote from Bank of Montreal economist Douglas Porter. The fear is that allowing Greece to fail is the equivalent of opening up Pandora's box, letting the evils of the world's financial system fly free. Basically, we're dealing with something that's an unprecedented. We have had defaults before, like Russia or Argentina, but none of an industrialized economy, and not one in a major currency era. This is from CTV News 2012. Well, yeah, as already said, just Canada was not sure. Like, in other words, the Canadian government couldn't be sure that a similar crisis will not overwhelm any other economic partner in Europe. So I've got some proofs about that. So this is imports, exports, and trade balance between the EU and Canada 2009 and 2019. Here, as you can see, this is like between 2009 and 2019, and within this time, between 2009 and like 11, 13, 15, within this time, especially within these years, which I'm going to say 2012, which was the most difficult year for Greek, and 2015, well, as you can see, this is blue line is exports, like red line is imports, and like balance between these lines, even between 2013 and 2014, it dropped down for a bit, and that actually proves that within those years, well, I think you can actually see the difference between how it was constantly growing around 2016 to 2019, like the balance and like exports and imports, and how it was slightly growing but still going up and down within years between 2009 and 2016, which actually proves the point. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that these statistics came from Infostat 2020. So to make this clear, overall, this crisis, it made a huge impact on overall life in Greece, on the functioning of Greece economy, on the social situation, on the small businesses situation, on basically on every single aspect of Greece's life. And talking about Canada, we cannot say, even though this event was a world event, like world known event, and it affected everyone and every single country. Well, yeah, more likely that's more correct to say every single country than everyone, because we can notice that in Canada, no one was directly involved. I mean, speaking about like casual people, but talking about financial potential, about different trading patterns, about different perspectives, we can see that Canada was actually, well, we cannot say that Canada was scared, but we can say that Canada played careful, because if the same situation could happen with any other country, like any other country, especially talking about the European Union, and since now globalization is all around the world, everything what happens with one country is gonna directly or indirectly affect the other country. So we may say that Canada is also involved in this situation. Or of course, like I could have written it in my stakeholders in Greece within the crisis, but like different countries were more or less affected by the situation. So I just decided to create other countries section in stakeholders. So I think that's it. I also believe that within this presentation I've mentioned different in-text citations, but this is my citation page. I don't know did we have to include it, but I decided to include it just in case. Whew. I believe that's it. Thank you very much for listening. You're welcome with your questions.